is the final review of reviewing manga from my shoujo event, and I feel so many mixed feelings, but it was such a strong ending to this series because, oh my goodness, I love coming back to this series and rereading it again. Hello friends, happy Friday, so very excited that you're here. I am sharing a manga review for a series, like I said, that I have actually read before. I've been reading it since it's been releasing, but this is the first time I've actually gone back and reread from the beginning. This was a manga that got in third place in my shoujo event. If you're unsure of what manga were the winners, definitely check out this video here as I shared the breakdown of all the voting, how it went. I was going to review the top 3 most voted series, and this series was the last one that was on the list. That was a condition called Love. I read volumes 1 through 8. Volume 8 was the first time I've read it since it just recently released. Oh my goodness. I have been like a little nervous about this video, and I know sometimes I say that often, like I'm nervous to review certain series, but I felt like there was a lot of unintentional pressure behind this, and I think it's just because I know people have like done really great analysis of it and why people should read it. And there's a lot of, people like, this is such a problematic story. Hanoni is such a red flag character, and I just felt like I needed to prove these things wrong, or if not prove them wrong, because I'm not gonna lie, Hanoni, he definitely gave me some red flags in the beginning, the first time and the second time that I read it. But I want people to know that this series is so incredibly wonderful. I feel bad too because like when I read the first time, I was rereading my Goodreads review, and I had like these really nice in-depth reviews sharing all my thoughts, right? And then the second time I'm reading, I'm like, they're just so cute. I was like, Lord, where's the same depthness here, or the deepness that we had the first time? Where is that the second time? No, I mean, that's not a bad thing. That's definitely not a bad thing or anything like that. But I guess I felt like I was putting pressure on myself that I needed to talk a certain way that really just sold to convince people. I mean, hopefully today I can do that. But ultimately, I was like, you know what? I just want to come on here and talk about how much I love this series, because rereading it the second time was such a treat. It was such a treasure to me because I viewed things so incredibly differently. And I am going ahead and getting my review. Didn't even say what it's about. So let's pause. Let's say what this manga is about in case you're not familiar with it. So this manga centers around our main heroine. Her name is Hotaru. She's 16. Her and her friend are at a cafe. They're eating, and then suddenly they overhear this girl yell, "You'll never find romance or love in life like that," and she splashes water all over him. And they're like, oh my goodness, like I can't believe that guy just got dumped like that. Well, Hotaru leaves the cafe after meeting with her friend. Come to find out, her classmate Hanoni, he was the one that got dumped, and he's sitting out on this bench at the park in the snow, like snow has been built up on his shoulders, and he's just sitting there. And so she feels, why would somebody tell him that supposedly loved him such mean and hurtful things? And so she goes up to him and she just puts the umbrella above him so the snow doesn't fall on him, and fall on him anymore, I should say. Leaves the umbrella there, thinks nothing else of it. Well, the next day he comes to her classroom and says, hey, I like you, will you go out with me? And that is the beginning of their love story. It was very wonderful. Now, I'm not going to deny that when I first started this, I actually had a friend, I believe it was my friend Sandy, she warned me, she said, this series is so good, but you need to give it a little bit of time. She says, I promise you, he is not how he seems in the beginning. And it's true. It's true. This is a series I really feel like you have to commit to, because Hanoni, he gave all the warning signs in the beginning, and I've seen the reviews of people like, Hotaru, she needs to get away from him, he's just bad news. And I get that, and I'm not saying that they're not wrong, because if I had not been warned, I'll be frank and say I would have not continued this series. I'm not gonna even front on that, because I remember thinking like, I'm so glad my friend warned me, because as I've gone on, I mean, the series gets better and better, and you really get to know these characters, and you see behind the layers, especially with Hanoni. He is not, try to think of how to word this. I was about to say he's not how he is perceived in the beginning, but you get his backstory, and it is so compelling. And it was, I think, volume 4 that I was like, he's not the red flag he appeared. You see why he's doing the things he's doing. You see his intensity, his motivations, and I'm not saying that it justifies his actions and, coming across like, dude, this guy's pretty creepy, but you really get to see his heart. You really get to understand why he does these things, which leads me to say the one thing I took away from rereading this series this time is that this honestly is a manga of change. I believe it was volume 3 and volume 6. Both times, Hotaru said says a comment internally or like externally to somebody. She says, not all change is bad. Not all change is scary. Am I afraid or nervous of change? Yes. But if love can change you for the worse, love can also change you for the better. And I feel like that is a testament of this series, because while I really enjoyed rereading the earlier part of this series, I honestly feel it was volume 5. That is when I felt very emotionally invested in a different way than when I was reading this series as it was coming out. I mean, I loved it both times. I'm not saying that, but I felt a different investment when we got to this volume, because it's like you see the height of these characters and how they're changing. You see behind the mask that Hanoni wears. Even with Hotaru, I mean, he genuinely loves her and cares for her. But when you get to see his real smile, it is everything. And you get to see his vulnerability, and you get to see just who Hanoni is, not what he feels he needs to be because of other people, or who he feels he needs to be to, get Hotaru's love. No, you see the real him. And when it comes to Hotaru, I love her as a female heroine. She is, I forget the word that the blurb uses on the back of the first volume. She's not apathetic concerning love, but she really feels like that she will never find love. Like when we're first meeting her, she is adamant that I guess you'd say adamant, yeah, that she, as long as she's happy with her family and with her friends, she doesn't need love. She doesn't ever need to find it, and she doesn't understand people who are so passionate about their loved ones. Is she supportive? For sure, she really is. Like, she's not rude or discouraging about it, but she herself doesn't get it. And that's when Hanoni comes into her life, changes everything. And I really love that when I was rereading this, that some people could say, well, she just wants to have a boyfriend. She wants to just say that she's had a boyfriend for the first time in her life. And no, it is not about that. Hotaru is a very thoughtful and thinks a lot about her feelings and her emotions. She's very intuitive. I think that's the word I'm looking for. She thinks a lot about, why do I feel this way? It sort of reminds me of Strobe Edge in the sense, which I have reviewed on this channel, of where she's asking, what is love? I forget the main girl's name of that series, but this series is different. Yes, Hotaru is asking what is love to a degree. It's more of, how do you know this is love? And she asks these really loaded questions, and her friends are so great. She doesn't want a feeling to just guide her, if that makes sense. And I'm an ISFJ. That is my like personality, the MBTI thingy. And so I base a lot of my decisions on my emotions, on my feelings. Hotaru is not like that. I am not good at like the whole labeling thing, but I feel like she would be like an INFJ. She thinks about so much of her feelings, and just like that, she asks these questions, that I found her a very refreshing heroine, because it took her a few volumes before she starts really making decisions when it comes to love, because she wants to know the answer for herself. So I feel like it's a much bigger thing than, well, I just want a boyfriend. Like, no. With all of this, I feel like this series really debunks, or try to think how to word this, but when I was reading, okay, some people could say that the saying of love is blind could be applied to this series, and I think that's so wrong, because when you get to later volumes, I think it was volume 7, I think it is, yes. When you get to volume 7, they're at the pool, they see Hanoni's ex-girlfriend. We find out a lot of things about Hanoni, and if we thought he was intense in the beginning, we see how intense his past self was. And I feel like I was supposed to say for any normal person, that's not fair to say it that way, but I feel like majority of us, if we were in Hotaru's shoes and we found out these things, we'd be like, I am getting away. I'm getting away from this guy. Like, that is just another level of intensity that I can't deal with. But Hotaru, she's like, okay, when she finds out these things, she acknowledges them. She's not pretending, like being blind to love, like, oh, Hanoni's so great, I don't see any of his flaws. No, she sees these flaws, or what people will say are creepy or bad things, and she's like, you know what? I acknowledge this, and let's work through this together to help ease your anxiety so that we can stay together and get closer. And I admired her so much. Like, I felt that so strongly both times when I read this volume alone, because it speaks so much of Hotaru's character, I guess you would say personality, who she is as a person, and how she's just not turning Hanoni away. I mean, these characters really show this story really shows that these two people are what they are. They're people. They're people with flaws. They are not perfect people. They've made bad decisions. They've made good decisions. And so I feel like there's maybe not a relatability is the right word, but sometimes this story feels bigger than fiction, if that makes sense, because like I said, they just feel like real people to me. I once again appreciate that, and I definitely feel like it has its fluffy moments, so that definitely makes my fluffy shoujo loving heart very happy. But I really appreciate the depth and the layers, honestly, that are to this story. I mean, as you're getting to know both of them, and both of them change. Another interesting thing is when I read the first time, I felt like I was so focused on Hanoni and like his story and his arc. I mean, it is breathtaking. I am not going to knock that. He has a really subtle, slow-going character growth, excuse me, that is so very satisfying to read about. But Hotaru has it too, and I definitely paid more attention to that on the second read-through. I don't know if it's as subtle, I don't think that's the right word at all, but I feel like it's there. Maybe I didn't see it the first time, but I really love just seeing her grow more confident as a young woman. That love has changed her, and it has changed her for the better. Honestly, that was sort of addressed in volume 8 and how everybody's not necessarily happy about the changes that she's made, but it gets addressed, and it was really wonderful, even though I felt bad for the person because Hanoni doesn't sugarcoat anything. And when it comes to him, I do agree with one of the guys that makes a comment that he doesn't care if people hate him. He's gonna be who he is, think how he wants, do what he wants, and he could care less if the world hates him for it. And I find that really amazing because, like that guy said, I'm the same way. I cannot just be like that. No, I mean, that hate would get to me. I am an ex-people pleaser, and sometimes I still have those tendencies. So seeing how Hanoni is not afraid to be blunt to people and tell them like it is, I do find very admirable. I don't think that is a bad flaw in him. Does it create some interesting situations? Yes. Yes, it sometimes does. I'm not going to say that it doesn't. A really actual great example, I don't even remember what volume he is in. So when you meet sort of the love rival as he is, I feel bad because when I first met this guy, I did not like him. This guy here, Yao, I think is how you say his name. This guy is a great guy. He just fell for the wrong girl. And I feel bad for him because now I see that. But the first time I read it, I didn't like how he was telling Hanoni things like, you need to, there's some things there, I'm not gonna say what it is because that'd be spoilers, but he's saying, Hanoni, you need to go tell Hotaru this. Hanoni's like, well, if you got a problem, you go tell her and whatnot. You come to find out that he does have feelings for Hotaru, but he is amazing throughout every volume where he really respects Hotaru. He doesn't want to ruin her happiness. He wants, if she's chosen Hanoni, he wants her to be happy with him, despite that he's struggling with his own feelings, which did have a little bit of humorous moments in volume 8 because of what a coworker, the advice that she gives him. But I really just saw how great of a guy he is, and I was just really shocked because I did not feel that way. In fact, when we first meet him, I think it was volume 3, volume 4, I knocked the star off because I was petty. I'm not gonna lie. I was petty that I was like, I don't want this to be a whole love triangle thing. Like, no, volume 8, the blurb, I usually don't read the blurbs before I read, but then I read the blurb before I read it, and I was like, that was dumb. Don't do that, because then I was like panicking and freaking out. But that volume really shows and spotlights how wonderful of a character he is and how great of a guy he is. And so I'm glad this second time that I could genuinely appreciate his character because he totally impressed me, and how he also, he's a good-natured guy. And that's what I was trying to say. I got yapping about him, but I bring that up because when you compare him to Hanoni, you see how vastly different they are and how it would be so easy, I don't, but it would be so easy to ship Yao here with Hotaru because he's so similar to Hotaru. They both really love helping people. They love encouraging people. They love being there for them, and just overall really great and sweet people, while Hanoni has these red flags and come across more problematic, and people are like, he's a gaslighter. He's hiding his real self. And yes, he's hiding, I think, parts of himself, but not in a way where like he's like, I got Hotaru, I got the bag, and now I'm gonna do a 360 or 180 of my life and be a completely different person. I don't feel like he's like that. I feel like because he has been hurting for so long and he's been hurt by so many people that he is afraid to be vulnerable. He's afraid to be transparent. And he even says at multiple points, I'm afraid that I'm so happy right now and that this happiness is going to go away. And it just breaks your heart when you read those moments. But I appreciate the foil that we have between these two of how opposite they are. I mean, I love Hanoni. I'm shipping him with Hotaru till the very end. I want nothing but their happiness for them. But it was interesting to see that this time around, and I'm thankful that Hanoni, there is a time where like I was super worried. I think it was like the volume 3. I was just like, Hanoni, like I'm not agreeing with your decisions right now. I don't like what you're saying, especially with how much you care for Hotaru. Why would you say this? But that was a really critical point, I feel like, for Hotaru, in that she might have questioned her feelings. And she even says, I may have not had faith in myself, but I have faith in the relationship that we have built together, in the memories that we have. I feel like that's another foundation strengthening part to their relationship here, of how it's just growing and building up, and how really they take these small steps. In the beginning, you know, she's like, what are some things that you want to do together? What are things you don't want me to do? And so that sort of led to, what are things that you want to do together? Then when things are coming out and Hanoni's like, I need to tell you something, and he looks like the world's ending, Hotaru's like, wait, should you really tell me this right now? Because you seem like this is really horrible. Why don't we take it small and build up to these heartfelt situations? And really, they just have these small moments like this over and over again, where they really start to get to know each other. And even though I'm a married woman and I'm not in high school, I felt deeply inspired by their communication, of how they're always trying, how they're always working hard, not necessarily just at their physical looks, which I loved when that arc was like addressed. It was so good. Hanoni was the man, and what he said to Hotaru, really love that. But they're working on themselves for themselves, but also to get to know the other person. And if there's one thing I ultimately want though for Hanoni, by the time this series ends, I feel like right now Hotaru is filling the hole in his heart. Hotaru is filling his life with something so much better. And while I want him to be happy, I want him to be deeply in love with her and just have happiness for the rest of his days, I also want him to be just happy for himself. But there was a really amazing quote at the end of volume, or not the, somewhere in volume 8, and Hanoni's talking to this person. I was just really blown away, because Hanoni, when he says things, he really is blunt and honest, but I mean that in a super positive way though, like not in a bad way. So anyway, he's talking to this girl and he's saying like, hey, you have found sort of your passion, and you know, you could throw yourself all into this. And this person hasn't been happy that Hotaru's spending like all of her time with Hanoni. And so he tells her, there are some people who go their entire lives without finding that. They never find themselves, find where their real talents lie. There are some people whose entire self-worth is based around whether other people validate them. But just because those people aren't fulfilling their dreams, it doesn't make them background characters in the stories of the people like who you are. I really feel like this quote just spoke so much about him, and that how he feels like other people have to validate his self-worth. And I say all that because ultimately I want him to find his own self-worth for himself, not because of Hotaru, not because say of his mom, his dad, or grandma, or his friends. No, simply for himself. I usually do not love the trope of girl saves boy, but I feel like the trope is so very well done here, and that there's so many layers where it's not as simple as Hotaru is saving him. Yes, she has saved him in ways, but you see these characters growing, and they are changing in a way where they themselves just are changing for themselves, I feel like. Where Hotaru is realizing, like when it came to sort of that beauty arc, and how Hanoni tells her, like, you know, you're always working on yourself. Maybe not physically to make yourself more beautiful, but because you're working so hard on yourself, for yourself at times, it's what made me fall for you. And so I feel like this trope becomes more broken, and that it's just not so simple to put that label on this kind of story, because these characters are so much more than just saving one another. Now, granted, Hotaru has changed Hanoni's life, and I'm so thankful she is in his life. Also, there was a time where Hotaru tells Hanoni, like, thank you for being in my life. I'm like, only girl, you could see how much you've changed him, and honestly, how much he has changed her. And I hope that it continues to be good change, because I think it was in like volume 7, they're at home and something happens. Nothing too major or anything like that. But Hanani's like, you know, I feel like she's changing, and I feel guilty because I don't know if this is fully the right change that she needs in her life. I was like, Hanani, don't let that be a foreshadowing, buddy. Don't let that be a foreshadowing for the future, because I love these characters very, very much. I have seen very minor spoilers out of context. I've only seen like one panel, and I'm like, please let everything be okay. Let everything be okay. way, because this is a series, again, you are in it for the long haul. You are in it to see these characters change, to see them grow, overcome things, and realize new things about themselves. That is so very beautiful and satisfying as a reader. And thankfully, they have very, very amazing people alongside them, because the side characters are really, really great. I absolutely love them. The MVP of this series, hands down, I can't say his name, but he is the basketball dude. This guy right here. He is not the friend of Hanoni. I loved him. He's the MVP. He's the MVP. He is the friend that Hanoni needs in his life. To just see him as a not so-called friend, as they say, and be there for him. I was looking at a preview, I think it was for like volume 12 or 13 or something. I am so excited for what's to come. I'm hoping that what I saw means what I think it means, but he is amazing, and I really, really love his character. I love his friendship with the other characters. He's a great boyfriend to Kyo-chan, which is sort of like, I think, Hotaru's best friend, if not one of her closest friends. Yeah, they've been friends since middle school. Kyo-chan was funny. She is hilarious as all get out. I loved her. She really lightens up, I feel like, Hotaru's life. And I'm trying to find, here she is. They're in the back right here. And I feel like she is just so straightforward in what she wants and how she will listen to Hotaru, but she doesn't always give Hotaru advice and just encourages her like, you're doing great. You're doing great. Because one thing I feel like that is emphasized in the beginning is don't rush it. Because Hotaru's like, you know, I can't do this, I can't do that. And she's like, how do I get over this hurdle? And they're like, you're gonna get there. Like her friends, her and I don't know if I can find, wait, she's in the final volume, or not the final, she's in the latest volume. Kyo-chan and her other friend, I feel like just really encourage her to just keep giving her all, to not give up, to hang in there, that she's doing great. I'm gonna make sure I don't show a spoiler, but her right here, she's really cool. I like her. She's one of the characters that like everybody swoons over because she's just so incredibly cool, and I 100% agree with them and why they would, because I always love when she has these really cool moments on page. And one of them I really loved is she's sort of like the first person to befriend Hanoni from Hotaru's friends. Though Hanoni and Kyo-chan's friendship, there was one about bathing suits, and I loved it. I was like, you know, Hanoni really is changing because he can just be himself and tell things frankly to Kyo-chan, and Kyo-chan gets it. I've really, really loved seeing Hanoni, his friendship with Hotaru's friends. It has been so good. It's one of my favorite parts and something I really appreciated the second reread, because I'm like, he's changing. And I know I keep using that word, but it is very, very true. I like the co-workers. There is one co-worker specifically at their job. She is absolutely hilarious. I love her. The way that she grew, I was all here for. I'm hoping we see her again. I'm blanking on her name. Starts with an S though, but I really, really liked her. I really loved Hotaru's sisters, and I was so glad that in volume 8 we see more of them again, because we sort of only saw them sort of like the youngest sister in volume 1, and then we sort of see the older sister a little bit woven throughout, but in volume 8, really, her younger sister really did get the spotlight, and I was very happy. And I'm like, volume 9, like I need it to be here. This is an amazing series. I would highly recommend it. And I know there's a lot of different things that are being said online right now, and I unfortunately am not caught up with the anime, so I can't speak anything about that. But this is a series that I feel like you can't just read volume 1 and judge it. Yes, you have every right, because that's just your right, but I do feel like when you read more volumes that you really appreciate the storytelling and how rich and how deep it is, and how these characters are so fleshed out, and how they're continually changing, and where they really are just coming together as a couple and showing the beauty and the power of communication, and not just settling, or, you know, sometimes you have to meet halfway. There's a lot of beautiful and wonderful elements there that I've just been deeply touched, like I said, as a married woman, and I'm like, wow, you guys are really, really amazing and have taught me some things. Ultimately, I think that, yeah, that for me, that I struggle with change, and seeing Hotaru working through her being afraid of change, and or at least being nervous about it, and that she doesn't have to be. It's been an amazing series, and I would highly recommend it. I'm so glad that it won and I was able to come back to the series. It is going strong, like my love for it, and I can't wait to see what happens next. Definitely will be like reading the next volume ASAP, because I couldn't read volume 8 as soon as it came in the mail, because I was like, I gotta read these first. But it was great. Thank you so much to everybody who voted for this series. I hope that I did this review for this series justice, and that you'll check it out. It is amazing, and I love it so very much. It is so very fantastic. But I would love to hear from you, friends. Have you read this manga? Have you seen the anime? Let me know down below. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe. And thank you so much for watching. Bye!